So, and Jennifer has the article, and she's welcome to she'll share it with you.
It'll just happen to.
Yes, it will.
It happened to fall on my desk, and
Right.
it will happen to fall on theirs. And
Exactly. And then I also have similar resources on Retell, because you're not the only school that's like, what is this Retell thing? It's driving me crazy. And and with the Common Core and the emphasis on that, it's been a real hot topic that I think is really rich to talk about and discuss. So I just have a few real quick things that I could say about Retell, and then what I think would be most useful would be probably, I have examples of Retells for the fourth letter, which is a 9, and we could read them similar to what we did with kindergarten, and first read them and score them ourselves, and just come to some consensus on what you think a 2 is, a 4 is, a 1, etc. Because that sounds like an area of concern. You're not sure how to score. Okay. Good. So, shall we? What would make sense? Should I just go over this really fast, the Retell, and then
Yes,
we'll go
please.
into the score? Okay. I just don't. I hate just talking at you if you're like.
We talk all day.
Okay.
yeah,
So.
I'm good.
Right. Exactly. Retell. So what is Retell? I think of it as comprehension monitoring strategy, not necessarily an end in and of itself, but something to help kids keep track and think about what they're reading. It's almost a means to an end. So, and it's also a great diagnostic for us to see as a window into how this kid is making sense of text. And in your rubric, you can kind of even pinpoint. Is it important events that they're not getting? Are they out of order? Do they not get the characters? Do they not get the setting? What part of story structure do they not get? Is it that they don't get what is important and what's not important? That kind of thing. What makes a good Retell? So that totally depends what you're looking for. It looks really different in kindergarten as it does in 3rd grade. And I do think you should start teaching it in kindergarten. Of course, it's going to be much simpler, like what happened in the beginning? What happened at the end of the story? Was there a problem in the story? What was the resolution? Maybe that's all you work on in kindergarten. And then first you start to talk about setting and character and character traits. And you have them include that piece in a Retell. Perhaps in 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade, you're really looking for author's message. You're looking for character motivation, character problem resolution, interpretation. It totally depends on what level and how complicated the text was and all of that. So Retell is somewhat complicated, not always so straightforward. And then and then I think I've seen Retell used in guided reading as like a springboard. So every guided reading, I'm talking like maybe steps 4 and above, kids as a kind of springboard to a comprehension conversation would be like, okay, let's do a quick Retell of that chapter. Or now that we've read the whole book, turn and talk to your neighbor, do a Retell, include these things. So it's, oh, thank you.
You're going to need these.
Yes, I think it's going to die soon. So I think you can build it in, thank you very much, as part of your you can do like as a matter of course, and by using turn and talk, we talked about this. By using turn and talk, it doesn't have to take a lot of airtime for the whole group to be like, okay, you sometimes may wanna do a full retell during guided reading, if that's the whole focus of the guided reading group. But it could be just like, build it in always, after each chapter, do a retell. And it may the retell may be just about that comprehension strategy you're teaching at that point. So, also.
Can I ask a question? Are you
yeah.
talking more like a turn and talk? So like, we just read 7 pages from Cam Judson.
Yeah.
And so now turn and talk to your partner about what we just read.
Exactly, and maybe.
Or if there was a focus, like turn and talk about what we just read about the characters,
Exactly.
motivation.
You
we
can
do
focus
retell
on one
that way.
aspect of the retell.
Okay.
Talk about the
Okay.
important events and why they're important. Talk about the order of the events, and that's it. Talk about the characters and the setting, that's it. You know, go ahead. Which one?
One of the things I've done is, I say, we have a minute, and when I point to you, you start the retell, and then I point, and,
Yeah,
and
I've done that
we need to be to the end by a minute, or, if it's a chapter or something like that, and then they're just like, oh, gosh.
Exactly, and like what Anna did, in 4th grade, she had her own private little retell, and she was like, I have my retell, and I want you to make sure your details match up with my details. So you ahead of time kind of know what important details you want them to cover. So I thought that can be or I want to make sure you include these aspects of the setting, whatever it is you're working on. And I do think, so that read aloud that we just went over, that could be a focus of good readers retell stories using interpretation, and maybe it's the STORY acronym. And maybe you model a good retell chapter by chapter, or after a picture book like Owl Moon, and you really break it down and transparent to them using that same structure of a read aloud. So that's definitely something you can do in whole group and teach how to do it and show exemplars of what it means. So I think it's a great, the uncommon schools talk about what could be a better tool to use in the age of Common Core when there's so much emphasis on text evidence and thinking. So it's a great kind of go-to strategy for them to always practice. So given that we have very little time, I thought, do people want to just go through examples of a couple retells?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, and we can do, so I'll read, this is the 4th letter, which I'm sure you're very familiar with. I'll read what it says.
Jeffrey.
Yeah, Jeffrey. And that's a great book. They have to do a retell to keep all that stuff straight. Okay, so this book is about a boy named Jeffrey. And he's supposed to mail these letters. But he stops to try on his friend's skates, and he loses one of the letters. He goes to the post office and finds out he has only 3 letters. And then he gets home, he goes to his room. He feels really guilty. He's afraid he's going to get in trouble. And then he finally tells his mom that he lost one of, and he gets the skates he wanted. So I'm sorry, I probably could pull up the rubric. I'll pull up a rubric for you guys. So, I have one.
So that to me, he's missing a lot of details on how he's trying to solve. He's missing that middle section where he's trying to solve the problem. And
Right.
To me, that wouldn't be a passing retell.
It wouldn't be.
No.
It wouldn't be.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, I thought.
No, because he missed the whole idea that the letter he lost was the one that was important to him, which wasn't a bill.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and he didn't
It was
talk about
important to
how he-
him.
Right.
All the ways, that he went back and asked Marcus, that he
I
said.
don't even know if they need that so much as they just need to know that he looked for it, he couldn't find it, and he was worried it was a bill, but it wasn't a bill. I mean, I would let him pass if they didn't ask, to say he went back and asked Marcus, I think it's a pretty small detail.
Well, but I think the part that.
I mean, that one I wouldn't have passed for sure,
No, but I think part of I guess my understanding was that they have to show what things happened that led to the solution. So part of, or what they did to get You know, like, so would you pass someone if they didn't mention all the times that he was turning on the TV, you know, turning on the electricity, like,
Because that didn't really find the solution. The solution was that the mom eventually
It doesn't
noticed.
affect the rest of the story. You know, all these little details, if it doesn't change what's coming up,
Right.
either the character or, you know, how the solution is found, if it doesn't change or have any impact on that, to me, it's,
But what I found when kids fail
It's
is
just
if they
tiny, it's
miss the
not-
whole idea that the letter he lost was
not good.
the only one that mattered to him, really. And I think kids don't understand what a bill is, which is their whole problem.
Right, yeah, exactly.
It's kind of in the
They're all online.
non-digital age.
Well, because they all think that the present is in the envelope, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's a
So
check,
what,
and what's
what
a
would
check?
people, maybe people could just hold up their, in fingers, what they would score at 1, 2, and I put the rubric on if that helps. You'd give it 2, 2, 2, 2, 2.
I had a confession at lunch today. I either give kids 2s or 3s. So
Right.
they either don't pass, or like I've already decided they either not passed or they've passed.
Well,
I guess I
think-
don't split hairs on,
Okay,
you know, like,
that's not a I think it's like,
I was like,
as you're gaining understanding what this
Yeah.
thing is, I think that's reasonable. Cause a 4 won't help their score at all. And
And-
until you have a better understanding of what that really means, I don't
Yeah.
think that's a bad habit.
Yeah, 4s and 1s I find are very rare.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess those ones are those ones that you're like, okay, 45 minutes and we're done. Like, you gotta stop talking. Or they don't give you anything, you know.
Right,
I mean, if
right.
it's really, it has to be really awful to be a
Yes.
1, and it has to be like
but it's
amazing.
amazing to be a 4, but not necessarily long.
No,
Okay, good.
no,
Okay.
not
No,
as
but
long.
I also think too now,
Sometimes
after
long is-
seeing your slide presentation and you talking about the fact that we can, I guess up to today, to me, the Retell always felt like something to check off on the step test that we say we got done.
Exactly.
Like, I'm not sure I even fully understood, but now I realize, like, because we had kind of initially made all these checklists with all the major events and we're checking them all off, but I'm thinking, well, that's really stupid because then I'm not really paying attention to what I'm hearing the kids say, because if I'm going to use the Retell for my teaching, I need to be in my head taking notes and thinking like, okay, yeah, they mentioned characters. He mentioned in that one the fact that the kid felt guilty. Okay, we do understand some character feelings, but there were no character traits. There were a lot of other
Right.
things or missing that, like the major message, like she said, about what this was. I'm leaving now with totally different information about Retell than up to today what I was leaving with. I was just like, okay, well, they got some of these details but didn't get some of the other ones. Woo, Retell is over. Now let's get to the
Yeah.
comprehension.
Right.
And
Yeah,
this
the real
makes
comprehension.
Right, this makes that very different. I mean, for me personally, I don't know how anyone else feels about it, but that just kind of changed everything for me.
Yeah, well, I asked teachers, like, once you get a little comfortable with just the managing the whole assessment, if you could take a minute after you give the Retell to, if you give a 3, to say what to know what they didn't miss, or to check off what they did well, and maybe, like, if they don't did not interpret, or give a quick thing as to what they're missing. Is it that they didn't include major events? Are they really good with characters but not the events? Or to give some insight, because I think this is the first line of defense. Rather than like, oh, I gotta think of tons of critical thinking and inferential questions for my guided reading groups, I'm gonna make sure that they can keep track of the story so they can even get there.
Yeah.
Because if they don't know why he's flipping on and off the lights or why he's turning, they're never going to be able to answer the critical thinking and inferential questions on the oral comp or written comp. They have to have a true understanding of the events and how they fit together. And this is the best way to figure that out.
Yeah.
So if you can use this as a little, like, circle whatever your record keeping is, either circle what they did well or circle what they didn't, doesn't matter. But some indication to you of what they did and didn't do, I think can be helpful when you go back in the data and say, where do I start with this kid? They miss, because all the time, they miss Retell, written comp, oral comp. Where do you start? You can't just fire away lots of questions, because if they're like, I don't even know what the story, I don't even get the story. this is where you gotta go first.